Welcome back to the Antel Solutions Podcast. We're all about building a circular future together here.
That's right.
Now, if you joined us for our first exploration, you'll remember we really got into the nuts and bolts of building trust in circular partnerships.
Crucial stuff.
Absolutely. So today, we're taking what feels like the logical next step. How do we actually measure success? In this circular economy we're all aiming for.
Yeah, what does good actually look like?
Exactly. We're calling this deep dive Beyond Greenwashing, redefining success with circular metrics. Because, well, let's face it, especially here in South Africa, you can't avoid it. You scroll through LinkedIn, walk through a mall. Companies are everywhere talking up their green efforts.
Right. There's a lot of noise.
But how do we, as consumers, but also as businesses, how do we really know what's genuinely making a difference and what's just, clever marketing?
That really is the million-rand question, isn't it? I mean, without solid, meaningful ways to measure things, this whole circularity conversation, it risks just staying on the surface. Superficial.
And, Victoria Darcy from All Things Circular put it so well. She said, tomorrow's leaders must focus on growing recurring revenue from multi-life cycle products.
Right.
This isn't a sacrifice. It's an opportunity. Circularity isn't a competitor. It's a business lever.
That's such a powerful quote. A business lever.
It really hits the nail on the head for what we need to unpack. It's about seeing circularity not as some kind of cost center you have to deal with, but as something fundamental that actually drives the business forward.
Absolutely. And that point, the business lover part, that's key. Because the greenwashing problem is definitely real. We see it all over in South African fashion.
Yeah.
You get these sort of vague claims, right? Eco-friendly materials. But what does that really mean?
Exactly. No
detail or electronics, maybe there's a take-back scheme, but, how effective is it? Is stuff actually getting reused or recycled?
FMCG, wow. The amount of packaging labeled sustainable or recyclable can be overwhelming. But the actual impact, often pretty murky.
And the tricky thing is, it's not always cynical. Even companies with really good intentions can get stuck.
How so?
Well, they might genuinely want to be more sustainable, but if they're still hooked on those traditional KPIs, the standard business metrics they've relied on for decades.
Right, the old ways of measuring things.
Exactly. They'll struggle to truly shift to a circular model and, importantly, show that they're making real progress.
It's almost like trying to, navigate using a map from 50 years ago, isn't it? It just doesn't show the right roads anymore.
That's a great analogy.
So what are some of these traditional KPIs, these old metrics, that can actually hold a company back from going circular?
Well, a classic one, maybe the most obvious, is focusing purely on the number of units sold.
Just volume.
Just volume. If your main target is just pushing more and more product out the door month after month, where's the incentive to make things last longer?
Right, or make them easy to repair. Or design them so they can be used again.
Precisely. It almost creates a kind of built-in obsolescence, The model relies on things not lasting forever.
That constant pressure for quarter-on-quarter growth. Always selling new stuff. It inherently makes the products already out there seem less valuable.
Definitely.
And I think another big one, especially relevant here in South Africa, is how companies tend to view reverse logistics. Maybe quickly explain what that means for anyone less familiar.
Sure. Reverse logistics is basically everything that happens after the sale. So handling returns, managing repairs, product takebacks, recycling.
Yeah.
All that movement of goods back from the customer.
Okay.
And traditionally, many companies just see this as a cost, something to be minimized, a line item on the expense sheet.
Right. So a return product isn't seen as maybe an asset you could refurbish or harvest parts from. It's just a problem, a loss.
Exactly. A problem, not a potential source of value. And then there's the compliance factor, particularly strong in South Africa sometimes. Companies focus on doing the absolute minimum required by environmental regulations. Ticking the boxes. It's ticking the boxes. Now, compliance is important. It's the baseline. But it doesn't automatically mean you're strategically embracing circularity to, maximize value or truly minimize your footprint. It's often reactive, not proactive.
Okay. So we've got a picture of how these old metrics units sold, quarterly growth obsession, seeing returns as costs, just meeting compliance can actually hinder progress. Let's flip it. Let's talk about the exciting part, these new circular metrics. What are some examples that give a clearer view of, real sustainability and business value?
Okay, so one of the most fundamental shifts is moving towards measuring product lifecycle extension.
Right.
Instead of just asking how many did we sell, you start asking how long do our products actually stay in active use before they're disposed of?
Okay. Measuring the useful life.
Exactly. And the moment you start measuring that, it immediately creates an incentive to design for durability, for repairability, maybe even for upgrades, anything that keeps that product circulating and useful for longer.
That's a really profound shift in thinking, isn't it? From just sell and forget to caring about the whole lifespan. What else?
Another really powerful one is tracking the percentage of your total revenue that comes directly from circular activities.
Okay, like what specifically?
Well, it could be income from selling refurbished goods, fees you charge for repairs, money you make selling recovered materials or harvested parts,
Right.
or even revenue from product as a service models. Where customers pay for access or usage, not ownership. Think about, say, a company leasing high-efficiency office lighting. That ongoing lease revenue is directly tied to a circular model they own, maintain, and eventually take back the lights.
Got it. So this metric really shows that circularity isn't just some corporate social responsibility thing on the side. It's actually generating cash.
Exactly. It proves the financial contribution. Then there's the material recirculation rate.
Sounds technical. What's that?
It basically measures how much of the material in your products or your packaging gets recovered and then reused, either back in your own processes or into another valuable cycle.
Okay, so like if a beverage company makes new plastic bottles using 30% recycled plastic from old bottles they collected, that 30% is part of their recirculation rate.
Precisely. Tracking that tells you how effectively you're actually closing the material loop, how much stuff is coming back and being used again.
Right, which shows if your design for recycling efforts and your take-back systems are actually working.
Absolutely. And one more key one, don't forget the customer. Measuring customer retention through your circular offerings.
How do you mean?
Are customers more loyal because you offer good repair services, or maybe because you have a convenient trade-in program or an easy way to return products for recycling?
Okay, so measuring if these circular activities are actually building stronger customer relationships.
Exactly. It helps you understand the long-term value these initiatives create beyond just the initial sale.
Wow. Taken together, these circular metrics, life cycle extension, circular revenue, material recirculation, customer retention through circularity, they paint a much, much richer picture of success, don't they?
Totally.
It's not just about environmental stuff anymore. It highlights real business benefits. That customer loyalty you mentioned, completely new ways to make money,
Yeah.
maybe lower material costs eventually, and even driving innovation in how you design products and services.
And it all ties back beautifully to Victoria Darcy's idea of life cycle leadership. The businesses that are going to win are the ones that get this, that understand a product can have multiple lives, multiple points where value can be generated.
Right.
It's about measuring growth differently, not just by how much new stuff you pump out, but by how well you manage, maintain, and extend the life and value of what's already out there.
So adopting these metrics,
Yeah.
it really shifts sustainability. It stops being just a cost or a hassle you have to comply with.
Yeah.
And it becomes a genuine strategic advantage, something that can drive profit and responsibility.
Precisely. It's recognizing that being circular isn't just, the right thing for the planet anymore. Increasingly, it's the smart thing for the business. But you need the right dashboard, the right gauges, the right metrics to actually steer the ship that way.
Okay, let's make this really concrete. Can you share an example, maybe anonymized, of course, but a real case from Antel Solutions, working with a South African company, where implementing these kinds of metrics made a real difference?
Absolutely. Yeah, we worked with a major consumer electronics retailer here in SA, and they had a big headache with product returns.
Common problem in electronics.
Huge problem. And their traditional way of looking at it, their main KPI, was purely the cost of processing those returns, plus the inventory write-down value. They basically saw every return item as a straight loss.
Very linear thinking. Product sold, product comes back, money lost, end of story.
Exactly. So we worked with them, encouraged them to shift their focus, to start tracking a few key circular metrics instead. Well, first, what percentage of those return products could actually be properly refurbished and then resold? Second, what was the total value they recovered from doing that compared to just, scrapping them?
Okay.
And third, critically, what was the repeat purchase behavior like for customers who bought these refurbished items?
Interesting. So not just counting the losses anymore, but actually measuring the potential for recovery and tracking what happened with this sort of new customer segment.
Correct. And the results? Well, they're pretty eye-opening for the client. Once they started focusing on refurbishment and resale value, they naturally began investing in better testing, better repair
What is
processes.
that?
And they quickly found out that for some categories of electronics, they could get back up to 80%, 80% of the original value by selling them as certified, pre-owned, or refurbished.
Wow, 80%. That's
Yeah.
massive value they were essentially just writing off before.
Huge value just being left on the table, yeah. But maybe the most surprising part, the real kicker, came from tracking those refurbished customers.
The repeat purchase rate.
Exactly. They discovered that customers who bought refurbished electronics actually had a 23% higher rate of making repeat purchases compared to customers who only ever bought brand new products.
Get out. 23% higher.
Yeah.
That's counterintuitive, maybe. Why do you think that was?
Well, we reckon it was a mix of things. First, these customers were often pretty savvy, value conscious. They appreciated getting a quality product, maybe last year's model, but certified and working perfectly at a better price.
Okay, the value proposition.
Right. But also, there seemed to be this positive emotional connection, a feeling, perhaps, of making a smarter, more sustainable choice. Buying refurbished felt good, not like settling for second best.
So just by measuring repeat business in that specific group, they uncovered this hidden pocket of really loyal customers, directly linked to their circular activity.
Exactly right. And the upshot was this whole returns management function, which they used to see as just a cost center, a drain,
Yeah.
it transformed into a genuinely profitable business unit,
Ooh.
all within about 18 months. Yeah, and they actually ended up expanding their partnership with us to handle their entire reverse logistics operation, including repairs, because they saw the clear business case. And that case was only visible because they started measuring different things.
It really hammers home that point for Victoria Darcy about resale potential. And it shows that looking at the whole customer journey, thinking about multiple product life cycles, it just reveals opportunities that those old linear metrics completely hide.
Absolutely. It just shows the power of these metrics to unlock hidden value, build loyalty, and do the right environmental thing. It's not either.
Okay, so for someone listening now, maybe running a business or part of a team and thinking, right, this makes sense, but where do I even start? How do I begin implementing circular metrics? What are some practical first steps?
Good question. The very first step, honestly, is to take a really hard look at how you measure things now. Do an audit of your current KPIs.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, are any of these metrics actually maybe unintentionally discouraging circular practices, like that focus on pure sales volume we talked about?
Right. And also look for conflicts. Are different departments pulling in different directions? Is your sustainability team trying to cut waste while your procurement team is solely focused on the lowest upfront cost for materials, even if they're hard to recycle?
That's a really crucial point, looking for those internal misalignments caused by different metrics.
Exactly. So once you've mapped out your current situation, the next step is don't try to boil the ocean. Identify just one or two key circular metrics that really resonate with your business strategy in your industry.
Start small, make it relevant.
Yes. Pick something where you can actually see a path to collecting the data and where it clearly links to a business outcome.
Can you give some examples, like good starter metrics for different sectors in South Africa?
Sure. For retailers, a really tangible one is tracking that percentage of returns resold versus discarded. It's often easier data to get hold of initially.
For manufacturers, maybe start with metrics around design for disassembly. How easy is it to take your product apart for repair or recycling? Or measuring the material recovery rate when products do come back.
Right.
Service businesses, they could look at resource intensity. How many resources, energy, water, materials does it take to deliver 1 unit of service? Can you reduce that?
And for FMCG, with all the packaging.
Yeah, FMCG is a big one. Good starting points are packaging recovery rates, how much actually gets collected back. Also, the product to packaging ratio, how much packaging are you using relative to the product itself? And definitely the percentage of recycled or renewable content going into your new packaging.
Got it.
But the key principle really is choosing metrics that directly connect your circular actions to tangible business value. Make that link obvious.
Okay, so audit first, then choose one or two key relevant metrics that show business value. What comes next?
Visibility and communication. These can't be secret metrics hidden away in the sustainability department. They need to be visible to decision makers across the business. They need to be understood. Maybe create a simple dashboard, put these circular metrics right alongside your traditional financial ones.
So elevate their importance internally.
Exactly. And then think externally too. Don't be afraid to communicate your progress and your challenges to customers, investors, partners.
Even if it's not perfect yet.
Especially if it's not perfect yet. Transparency builds trust. It goes back to what Victoria Darcy said and what we discussed in our first deep dive. Being open about your journey, using these metrics, builds those crucial, enduring relationships.
Now, one barrier people often mention is, well, actually getting the data for these things. Tracking products after they're sold seems complicated.
It definitely can be. That's a valid challenge. And this is where technology really comes into play.
How so?
Things like putting QR codes on products. They can link to info about materials, repair guides, take-back options. Digital product passports are another emerging area, basically. A digital record that travels with the product through its life cycle.
Interesting.
And even simpler things like offering small incentives for customers to return used products can help you gather both the products and the data.
And it sounds like you can't really do this alone within your own four walls?
Absolutely not. Collaboration is non-negotiable.
Yeah.
You need partnerships with your suppliers to understand the materials going in, with your customers to get products back, and often with specialized partners like Antel Solutions who can manage reverse logistics or data tracking.
Right.
Measuring circularity properly demands circular thinking. You have to look beyond your own company's boundaries.
So these metrics aren't just about counting things differently. They actually push you towards innovation, towards collaboration across the whole value chain. Looking ahead now, what do you see as the future for measuring success in the circular economy?
Yeah.
Where is this heading?
I think we'll see a few key trends developing. First, probably more standardization. Right now, there's still quite a bit of variation in how different companies define and measure, say, recyclability or product lifespan. Over time, I expect we'll see more widely accepted frameworks emerge, maybe something like financial accounting standards, but for circularity. That'll make it easier to compare apples with apples across companies.
That would be huge for transparency and benchmarking, yeah. What else?
Second, I think we'll see a much tighter integration with financial reporting. These circular metrics won't just live in the sustainability report.
Right.
As investors and lenders increasingly see the link between circularity and risk or opportunity, these metrics will become part of the core financial disclosures. It signals they're strategically important.
That makes sense. We're already seeing investors ask much tougher questions about this stuff.
Definitely. Third trend, automation and real-time data. As tracking tech like digital passports gets better and cheaper, imagine having real-time visibility into your circular performance. Like, you make a design change, and you can almost instantly see its projected impact on repairability or end-of-life material recovery. That kind of immediate feedback loop would allow for much faster, smarter decisions.
Wow, that sounds incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Getting instant feedback on design choices.
Yeah. And maybe a fourth trend I'd add is growing consumer visibility of these metrics.
You mean companies actually showing customers their circular scores?
Kind of, yeah. Maybe on packaging, through an app, in marketing. As consumers get more savvy about sustainability, brands will likely start sharing their performance on key circular metrics more openly to build trust and differentiate themselves.
Which brings us right back to that trust point again, doesn't it? Tying back to our first deep dive. Transparency through metrics builds customer confidence.
Absolutely. And really, as we wrap up, I think the main message, the fundamental takeaway, is that circularity and business success, they're not enemies. They're not in conflict. In fact, when you start measuring the right things, when you adopt these circular metrics, you often find that circular practices become potent drivers of profit, innovation, and that sticky customer loyalty we talked about.
It really brings that Victoria Darcy quote to life again. Circularity isn't a competitor, it's a business lever. It's really time for businesses here in South Africa and everywhere to grab that lever.
Yeah, and start measuring what genuinely matters for a future that's both sustainable and prosperous.
Because at the end of the day, in a world with finite resources, the companies that last, the ones that will truly thrive long term,
they'll be the ones that figure out how to grow by sustaining resources, not just by consuming them.
So a final thought for you, our listener. Take a moment. What are you actually measuring in your business right now? Are those metrics really pulling you towards a circular future, or maybe holding you back?
It's a powerful question to ask. We genuinely love to hear your thoughts, your experiences, your challenges with this. Please connect with us.
You can find us through the Antel Solutions website. That's antel.co.za, or look us up on LinkedIn.
And definitely join us next time. We'll be diving into human-centered circularity, empowering people to drive sustainability, really focusing on the crucial role that individuals, employees, customers, citizens play in making all this happen.
Looking forward to that one. Until then, remember, we're redefining success one metric at a time. Thanks so much for listening today.
Thank you for joining us.